Good day. The video you are watching will contain several interviews. The following interviewees represent various different archetypes, namely boomers, gamers, and non-gamers. We will try our best to explain to them what the AMD Radeon GPU is and what its capabilities are. Before we get into the interviews, here are some things you should know about GPUs in general and the AMD Radeon GPU. A GPU, a graphics processing unit, is a programmable processor specialized for rendering all images on the computer screen. GPUs provide faster graphics processing capabilities and are also widely used for scientific and AI applications that require repetitive computations. We'll talk about GPUs, specifically the AMD Radeon graphics, created by AMD, a company whose main products are generally anything computer related, and they released the first AMD Radeon GPU that belonged to the new Terascale family. The R600 replaced the old fixed pipeline model with a more modern unified shader model. In 2012, they then released the graphics core Next family, which provided better performance compared to the Terascale family. The most current family of GPUs is the RDNA family, which introduced multi-level cache, an improved rendering pipeline, support for GDDR6 memory, and PCIe 4.0. Having said all that, we will now begin the interviews.
Do you use computers often?
Yes, I do. I use computer.
And are you familiar with the different parts of the computer?
Yes, I am.
Can you name them?
To name a few, I know the monitor, the keyboard, and the mouse. That's all I know.
Well, you're technically correct, but those are just some parts of a computer, and those are mainly called the peripherals of the computer. But do you really want to learn about how and what really makes a computer work?
Yes, I'd love to, so I could finally understand what my children are talking about.
So this is called a CPU, also known as the Central Processing Unit. You can think of it as the brain of the computer. And there is another thing which is called the GPU. This is an AMD Radeon RX 6900 XT.
Yeah.
And we will be mainly focusing on this. And you can think of this as like the second brain of the computer.
Okay, but why does a computer need a second brain?
I want you to think of a scenario where there are two people. The first person has two very strong buff arms, and the other has 6 very skinny arms.
Yeah.
And let's say, for example, that you want one person to lift 2 heavy dumbbells. Of course, you would say that the person with the 2 strong buffed arms would be able to do it easier. And that is what the CPU is like. It is able to process just the same amount. Then, for example, in another scenario, you told them to carry 6 cups of coffee. Obviously, the person with the 6 arms will be able to do it so much easier than the one with the 2 arms. And that is what the GPU is like. It is able to process so much things simultaneously, and it basically helps the CPU in processing these things.
So my son wanted this and for Christmas, and it looks so expensive. It's just a box to me, just a piece of plastic. Why is it so important?
Well, the one that your son actually wanted is this, which is called a graphics card. And sometimes people mistake it for a GPU. The graphics card is composed of several parts, and one of them is the GPU. In this exact graphics card, the AMD 6900 XT, it uses a Navi 21 GPU. What makes them very expensive is that it takes several years for a company to develop an improved version of their existing GPU. And the parts that it is needed is very expensive. Plus, the more advanced the graphics card, the faster it will be. Your kid probably bought an expensive graphics card since video games, which I assume that he plays, require a very beefy GPU.
Yes, he's really a gamer. I know about that. So now I understand why it meant so much to him to buy that graphics card. And for me, after you explained it, it's more of an investment rather than a loss now because you'll be able to use it for a few years, right?
Yes, of course, that the more expensive, again, it's gonna last longer since it's gonna be better.
That's good to hear. So, yes, thank you for having me. Thanks for enlightening my boomer brain, and thank you.
What do you usually do on your computer?
Well, I usually use it to type in my essays, reports, and emails. But sometimes I also use it to watch my favorite movies in 4K during the weekends.
Do you ever wonder how your computer makes the movies you watch so immersive with the crisp graphics and resolution?
Well, aside from the common computer parts, I'm not really much of a computer expert. But yeah, I would love to know.
Great. So modern computers have this GPU or graphics processing unit whose main objective is to render graphics on the display. And they are similar to the CPU, except they are more capable and specialized in the graphics department.
Wait, hold on. If they're similar to the CPU, can't the CPU just do the rendering? Why do I need a GPU?
Nice question. Good question. Um, Technically, it can, but it is too much for the CPU to handle. Plus, it is not specialized in that way. It may get laggy or slow for the CPU to do the process, but it will be faster when the GPU does it.
So if that's the case, I suppose it's also marketed by tech companies, right?
Yes, currently there are many GPU manufacturers out there, but the two most popular manufacturing companies are Nvidia and AMD. Today we will talk more about AMD Radeon, which is AMD's popular product line. So let's take, for example, AMD Radeon RX 6900, one GPU from AMD. You might as well know right now that a computer has a CPU, a motherboard, a cooling system, which is the fans, and memory cards.
Yeah, I think I know about those parts.
Well, the RX 6900 and other AMD GPUs have a dedicated memory and cooling systems for themselves as they function in parallel with the CPU in order to deliver the intended high resolution graphics to display on screen. For times like you mentioned, when you are watching your favorite movies in 4K.
How long have you been a gamer?
How long? Let's see, maybe about 6 or 7 years.
Okay, so how important are games for you?
Games for me, as of right now, I think it's almost my life ever since pandemic. I've been playing games 24/7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a gamer, what does having a high-end GPU mean to you?
A high-end GPU? Well, as a gamer, I know that having good graphics will really boost my performance in game. Because I can't get that 30 kills if my FPS is not 300 every time. So when it comes to gaming, we really look at the performance side of things. I know that if I have a better graphics card than my opponent in a game, like the new AMD Radeon 690 XT, surely I'll get a better FPS and a better performance than my opponent.
That's right. So do you know how a GPU works then?
Sort of. I know that the GPU is the one that my computer uses whenever it renders something in my game, like if 3D stuff, and I just know that if I have a better graphics card, then my computer can process the graphics faster. But I'm not really sure how these things work.
But yes, you're on the right track. It's true that the GPU is the one that handles all the 3D graphics on your games, which the CPU cannot handle alone, since it is already responsible for running your games. Maybe through the Steam client where you are logged in. So, and other examples are Gallenero or other platforms. So that process part is for the CPU. The actual rendering of the graphics is the responsibility of the GPU, where the math on vector graphics is computed under the hood. So the gameplay you see is generally the output from the maths from your GPU.